So what I wanted to do is create this kind of, I guess it would be like a webinar or an instruction packet on how to actually make this storyteller project if you wanted to do it on your own. I wanted to use what we did at Masonicare and try to help people who might have a similar need or a similar requirement or a similar desire to preserve loved ones' memories or people that we care about's memories in a different way. I believe, we have this new technology and AI. It's not new per se anymore because people have been really adopting it heavily over the last couple of years. And it's just continuing to get more and more helpful in a lot of different ways. But one of those ways is to be able to process data and put it into themes or into voices much easier. And with that, we get an opportunity to do things a little bit differently that make creating a book a lot less intimidating. And in this particular case, it was about preserving individuals' memories and stories in their lives, and then being able to share that in a book form with other people who lived in the Masonic Air community, but also their family and for themselves as well. Preserving a little bit of their own history in a different place than maybe normally would be expected. So I'm going to just dive right into what I've created, and you'll be able to download this file on the website and elsewhere. Again, this is an instruction sheet on how you could potentially do this same thing with a group of people or an individual who you love or care about, or even just for yourself. So let me go ahead and hit the share button. I'm going to click here, and then we're going to do present in Canva. Okay, so hopefully everybody is seeing the Project Storyteller landing page here, and that we're able to kind of follow through this. So, what is this Storyteller project? First, as with any Generation Bridge thing, I just need to make sure that I'm always up front. Generation Bridge is a thing that we created at my church, but I've taken it on for myself. Ultimately, the idea there is that the different generations aren't necessarily supposed to be adversarial. We should be working together. It shouldn't be Gen Z is this, millennials are this, boomers are this, and Gen X are X, right? It really shouldn't be that. It should be, in a marketing standpoint and in a lifestyle standpoint, it should be about the things that we experience in our lives, the needs that we have at a given point in time. In many cases, that will skew towards the generation. Obviously, there are going to be certain things that happen when we're younger more often than when we're older. But that said, it doesn't mean that we are stuck in those places. And then there's also lived and shared wisdom that we should be going across. Because again, as a faith-based initiative, I believe that I need to take talents that I have, and almost it's a moral responsibility. Not almost, it is a moral responsibility to share what we learn for future generations, and for the ones that we're currently living in. In this particular case, I wanted to just say, why did I do this? So, Generation Bridge, again, it's something that I can do using um, the skills that I have that have been given to me by God to try to do some good in this community. I like to put people who have answers to questions in front of people who have those questions. It's not about those different generations, it's about the life stage challenge you're dealing with. I always use this example. I'm a 50-year-old guy. I have a 10-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 6-year-old. I have a lot in common with a 30-year-old guy who has similar age kids. We're going to be doing a lot of the same things. We're going to be interested in the same stuff. So just because I'm a Gen Xer and that person is a millennial, doesn't mean that we're not going to be sharing across these different barriers. I also, I'm someone who lives in the Northeast, and I might be very different from someone who lives in the South or in another country. But ultimately, that person who's living in the South or in another country may still have issues when it comes to caregiver and aging stuff that we tend to focus on most in the Generation Biz platform. So ultimately, I want to lead off with a little bit of scripture here. Proverbs 3 through 4. Let not steadfast love and faithfulness forsake you. Bind them around your neck. Write them on the tablet of your heart, so you will find favor and good success in the sight of God and man. So we have to be serving to one another. We have to love one another. And this was one of those things that came out of a motivation, something that was in my own life. And I just wanted to share this and say, I think we can do this and we can do it on more mass. And it can be done very easily, and there's no barriers to doing it. So why did we do this? I wish I had a lot of my grandparents' stories written down somewhere. I remember them anecdotally, but I have a hard time trusting all of my memory. And frankly, with my grandmother who was in Illinois, as she got older, her memory became more suspect too. And so there's pieces to their lives that I kind of wish I had, besides just photos. Because right now in our life, we have all these photos that we can keep taking left and right. And we didn't have that before. Only have a few photos. But those photos, I'd love to be able to tell my kids a little bit more about their grandparents, not just about who they were and what they did for me, but maybe also a little bit more about why they were the people that they were. And we hear so many people as we get older, we say we want to have our memoirs and we want to do this kind of stuff, but we never put the time and effort to do it because it is pretty daunting. But with today's technology, there might be some things that we can do. So I really wanted to do something that could show that this is a lot easier than we think. Ultimately, our elders have wisdom, faith stories, family histories, lessons that they've learned the hard way that they should be sharing with us. Because even if they did it 50 years ago, we're dealing with some of those same things today. And as we read through the Bible, honestly, I see so much of our culture in previous cultures, and that's why we study history. We don't want to make the same mistakes that we made before. Every generation, we hope, is going to be a little bit smarter and a little bit better at dealing with the challenges we face. We don't want to ignore people who've already done it. And the other big piece of this is most of our own family history or our own individual's history is not going to be written down, even though more and more of us are cataloging our lives in different ways now. We most of it is not going to be in there, and the important things that maybe our kids really want to learn about us may not be preserved in history. So I had seen something. Actually got it from my mom for Christmas. It was called Storyworth. Great platform, really cool thing. In the end, it would have helped her to create a book that would be able to be shared with the family. But it put the onus on her. So here's this great gift. It's like, yeah, I'm going to give you a gift like a vacuum cleaner and you can go use it and work with it, right? Like, yay. Now, me on a practical side, I'd actually like a good vacuum cleaner, and I'd be like, that's a great gift. But other people might look at this and say, well, now you're giving me more work to do, right? So this is where that kind of a platform, it really has to be a motivated individual to go through that process. And if I had been more motivated, maybe it would have worked better too, where I could have scheduled time to speak with my mom and do all those things. But in the end, it's a great idea, but it never actually happened, right? So then I thought, how do we just make this happen? How does it become that I can be more integrated into this process? So what did we do? The problem, we've already talked about this a little bit. Like it's hard to get everybody's stories aggregated. It's hard to get people to commit to a time. Maybe there's some technology issues, right? Maybe your parents or someone's parents don't have access to the kind of tech that we have in our homes. There's a lot of things that go into barriers for this. But what I wanted to do is to say, all right, I think we can use this technology in a different way. And it really starts by just having a conversation. If we could make storyteller back into storytelling, something more akin to just telling the story, without having to think about editing and everything else that might go into it, I think we can allow more people to do this on a regular basis. The other side that comes out of this is we can use AI tools now that didn't exist before. So I use Otter AI for work when I do research. Oftentimes, if I do focus groups or I do one-on-one interviews, I need to record it. And in the past, if I recorded it and wanted to transcribe it, I would have to send it to a firm and they would charge me per minute or charge me per word, whatever it was, right? However long back you go. In the case nowadays, though, we don't need to do that because Otter AI for an annual fee, I get something like 6,000 minutes a month that can be transcribed. And It was good before, it's getting better and better. It's really good now, and it will continue to get better. So I can record an interview on this Otter AI, and it's automatically transcribing it instantly. So within a couple of minutes, the final version is actually available for me to download, and I can take that and I can copy and paste that into something like a ChatGPT or some other AI platform. And I can give that AI platform some instructions. And I can say, please take this story from this person and let's talk about this person. This is who they are. This is what they do. This is where they come from. This is when they were born. This is their personality, blah, 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 right? You give it some really good definitions. Take that copy and pasted story or the interview into it, and then you ask ChatGPT to create a story around that. And you can give it parameters like how long you want the story to be. I want it to be 3,000 words. I want it to be 1,000 words. All these different things can go into it. And you'd be surprised. Within 30 seconds to a minute, you've got a really good version of that story. Read that through, see if you have anything you want to add or change, and then you can actually send it back to the individual and say, what do you think about this story? So, what did we do? The process. We partnered with Masonic. I have some friends over there. I said to them, listen, I have this idea for a project. Would you be willing to let me do this with you? I'm not going to charge you because Generation Bridge is not a nonprofit, but it's a nonprofit. It's for God. There's no cost to it when I do these types of things because I'm just passionate about doing something that's good for other people in this sense. So in this case, I said, would you guys be willing to do this? What do you think about this idea, this concept of a storyteller project? And we want to focus it on voluntary. So it's people who want to participate. It's not like this whole wing has to participate or I'm going to walk room by room. We go out to the individuals and we ask if they're interested in doing it. And then we talk with them and then we say, if you're willing, we can do this. It's not an interrogation, it's a collaboration. I'm not going to take your story and profit off it, and I'm not going to change it or edit it in anything that you can't approve or change. So we just make sure that it's a very collaborative process, and it was great. The idea again, residents share their stories because this is a faith-based project. We did ask for people to share something where maybe Jesus made a big difference in their life, but we didn't restrict it to that because obviously not everybody's going to believe in Christ the way I do. I believe it's meaningful, it's transformational, but at the same time, what we really wanted people to focus on were things in their life that were transformational. And so they weren't restricted to just write about faith. They could write about other things that happened to them. The only requirement in this particular case was that it was something that meant something or changed their perspectives or had an impact on them. Then we capture that story and we ask them for different types of things that describe them, how other people would describe them, because we want it to be written in a voice that mirrors something that they might enjoy reading or telling about themselves. And then the outcomes, we thought we would have a book. I don't know if it'll show up with this video filter, but there we go. We envisioned that we would have a book at the end of it. It's not a big book. It's pretty thin. I think we've got about 65 or 80 pages, something like that. But it would be a gift to the individual who participated, shared their story with us, and it would be a gift to their family. So they'd be able to give a copy to loved ones, so that they could see that their parent was highlighted in this particular book. And then again, it's a public artifact as well that honors their lives. It was going to be put into the library at Masonic so that other residents could read about the people that participated. Okay, the process. What did we do? So we talked about this already, coordinated with Masonic. We invited people through Masonic to participate, got their consent. We did a pre-interview outline and explanation of the process. This was like a group meeting. We just explained what we were going to do. Then they opted in. Then we started scheduling interviews. We transcribed the interviews. The narrative development was me taking that transcription and putting it into ChatGPT with the parameters that we've already talked about. And then the other side to this, though, is they weren't required to do the interview. If they wanted to write their own, they could write their own. In fact, we had an individual who wrote her own story. Because the story needed to be edited a little bit in terms of flow, we did put it into ChatGPT to kind of help create consistency and sort of sequence in there. But then, of course, it filtered back to her, and she was able to approve it. Participant review, just like we said, everybody got to look at the stories and finalize or make changes, and then we finalized the piece. We compiled it into a book. We printed the book, and then we gave it out to the individuals and to Masonic Care as well. So what was produced? This is just an excerpt of what we were looking at. So Vincent Tanner, he was a firefighter in Bridgeport, and just I had a great time talking to him. He's a fascinating guy, lived a heck of a life, and just learning some of the way that things were different at different times. And it was good for me as an interview to do this process too. I mean, I think we might get into some of that, like some of the surprise victories of this project. Um, but really, this was great because he's a writer. He's actually written stories before and he's written books before. He's been published. And this was a little intimidating because, he's going to be a pretty good critic. In the end, the story that was produced and what he said and what we put through ChatGPT, he approved it. It was good for him. So even someone who was an author, a published author, found the story that we created through AI to be something that was good, represented his voice, represented the intent of his story. And what you can see here is also we took, I would do if I didn't have a picture already or something, I would actually ask GPT to create a line drawing representing the story. And sometimes you'd have to go through a couple of iterations for it to get what we were looking for. But in general, it did a very good job. And then we put it into this book format. And this is an example of the first 2 pages of his story in the book. So, what do we do? Again, we just defined the scope and the theme of everything that we were going to be putting together, so that we had some direction, right? We wanted to make sure that what we were compiling as a book wasn't just some random stuff. It had to have some focus, and the biggest piece there was like ways that either Jesus was impactful in your life or ways or things that you've learned that were impactful in your life and why they were impactful. Personality wise, we wanted to make sure we captured the personality of those people we interviewed. So we asked them themselves and we asked them what other people would say about them. We asked them where they were born, when they were born, where they grew up. All those things kind of help to give some crafting, and I think AI is going to get even better as it starts to be able to incorporate shared language and other things from different regions. But ultimately, we wanted to get a good idea of who that person was. So we get their story, what they're going to talk about, then we get who they are, and then we're going to use the tools in AI that allow us to do this much quicker. If I had to do this on my own, I couldn't have done it the way we did it. And it would have taken me a long time. And this is something, again, there's no money in this. I need to be as efficient with my time as possible. We learned some stuff on that efficiency, which we'll share in a little bit. But ultimately, the use of these AI tools drastically speeds the process up, and was very helpful for us to be able to make this actually happen. How the interviews and stories were collected. Again, volunteers. We talked with people at Masonic here to help us recruit them. We told them about it in the interview, and we said we'd like to do these interviews. It should take about an hour. Would you be available on whatever days that could be, right? We framed it. We wanted to be very respectful of emotional boundaries. So we didn't want them to be sharing something that would make them feel um, that was too intrusive. Let's just say that, right? They could be as sharing as they wanted to be, but we wanted to make sure that they didn't have to feel like they had to share something that was too personal that they didn't want their families to know, etc. So we talked about some of the different things that we focused on, life-changing, meaningful moments in their life that had an impact on them. And then again, we gave them the control over what was going to be included, what would be omitted, and whether or not it was public or private. And quite honestly, when everybody did this, I only had about 2 or 3 changes, and we'll talk about that in a little bit later as well. It did a very good job of framing the stories in a voice that they felt was representative of them. So, significant wins. The interactions and the stories of the volunteers themselves were just amazing. I mean, here's the thing that you get out of doing a project like this. I got to meet 8 or 9 people that I would never have met before. And honestly, I got to talk to them from a different point of view than I'd ever really thought of talking to people from that generation about. Usually we're talking about what types of things are going on in your life, what are you doing, dealing with, all that kind of stuff, not necessarily about what made them who they are. And so I got to really connect with people. I had another interviewer who came with me, Patty Schiff. She did a great job, and she said it was really meaningful for her to sit down and talk with this woman who we were talking to, who's 99 years old, almost 100 years old, the things that she's seen in her life. And it was just a great opportunity for us to do outreach, to meet new people, and to capture something that was meaningful in their lives, and then to be able to share it off. AI did a great job. That was another huge piece of this. It did better than I thought it would do. There was really only, like we said, 2 to 3 revisions. One of them was the name of an individual, because I had it spelled wrong in my world of my notes. And so when I looked at the story, obviously I looked at it as like everything matches up with what I thought the name was. But when Vincent saw it, he's like, no, no, actually, this is the guy's name. Later on, of course, I search it out, and he is a firefighter who was referenced and has been memorialized because he did die, when his ladder hit the power line. And again, it was just a great collaboration because in that story, he sees it, reads it, says, actually, everything's great except for the name. Changed the name. When I searched out the name, all of it tied up and is verified. A couple of other things, like another individual wanted to add a picture at the end, and to add something else in it to remember her father. So we were able to make that change, as she requested it later on. So it was really very good at keeping things, keep presenting it in the voices that they agreed with, and so forth. Self-publishing a book, a little bit intimidating, a little bit of a learning curve in the beginning, but honestly way easier than I thought it would be. I used a particular site. We'll talk about that in a little bit as well. But really, just a fantastic amount of resources on there to give you guidance about how to structure it physically, so that when you're printing it, it comes out the right way. So, things like the size of the margins, where to print in, all that kind of stuff. So then once you have that, you can then set up your Word document, and put your stories into that, and it will be all formatted the correct way. And it's a very easy process. And then once I got that into a PDF, it was easy. The hardest thing about it was actually trying to format the book cover. That was the hardest part. So it's really an easy process to do something like this. Where could we improve? Well, it did end up becoming a difficult part for me to do all the interviews because we were trying to be flexible around the participants' timeframes. But in reality, the participants that we were talking to, they had a little bit more flexibility than probably I would have thought, right? So I was trying to find times with the volunteers who were coordinating the sort of in-betweens, to do these interviews. And so it ended up taking weeks to get just 8 interviews, right? Like it doesn't sound like it should take that long. Probably could have done some stuff through the phone, or virtually as well. However, that takes away from some of that experience as well. So I think, ultimately the best thing you could probably do is to really set up 2 or 3 days where you're going to be on site or doing something, and then allow everybody to come in at their scheduled times. And you work with your contacts at a particular place. And again, you could do this at your church or something else, and it's just a matter of saying, I just want to get through all the stories on these 2 days. And what will end up happening is it will go very smoothly. You'll get all the content, it's all ready, and then within another day or so, you would actually have the materials for the book. So I could theoretically see this whole thing taking roughly 3 days from interview to drafts, for people to approve. Um, I think in the future it would be better to do something where I would have control, or not control. I would have access to phone numbers or the individual, so I could set up the time directly with them as opposed to using someone who's going in between. Because again, this becomes a priority that might be a priority for me, but not necessarily as big a priority for those who are doing their day-to-day jobs in something like this. So I think ultimately the best thing would be is that everybody provides their contact information, and we're allowed to reach out to them directly. I think that's just the best way. It would help to kind of eliminate some of the back and forth time. Um, I think another piece to this, it really only happened with one of the individuals, but um, it really worked well when you had the story was already in mind. Okay. So we did provide questions ahead of time for people to kind of think through what they should be coming through with the story. It's very important because then that focuses that interview and conversation. When it's more of a broad interview and you're just trying to discover what they want to talk about, it does create a little bit of drift in the story. You kind of go in and out of different topics, and sometimes you come back. In that one story, that was the one story that I actually had to rewrite because AI wasn't getting it right. It was coming back and it just didn't feel like it was really the right story. It was out of sequence because the interview was out of sequence, right? So it was trying its best to kind of create a cohesive thing, but it wasn't tying the sequential aspects of that particular story. Like this happened, then these things happened, this happened when I was younger, etc. So you really want to make sure that person kind of has a good framework of what they want to talk about and that they know the story they want to talk about. Um, and then I probably would have benefited from doing even a little bit more of the personality exploration, getting a little bit more of ways that I could give Chat GPT or an AI more instruction about how to write this thing. Because I think ultimately we did a good job of capturing sort of the voice of the individual that we talked to. But I do feel or wonder if we could have even done a little bit better. And maybe exploring with them too about the type of story that they prefer this to be. Is it a narrative or is it conversational? All those types of things became questions that we started asking after the first couple, because the first couple we just kind of did as a narrative. But then as we were kind of going through it, it was putting it together in conversational formats. And it's like, oh, this is actually pretty entertaining. This is good. So I would just say there was learning that came with sort of figuring out how to drive the personality and the prompts that we want to use for ChatGPT or whatever AI might be used. Tools that we use, Otter.ai, that's the transcription tool. It also does a really good job of summaries. So I use it a lot for note taking and other things like that. It's just very efficient for me that I can have a conversation with someone as opposed to constantly writing down the notes. That said, writing down notes is still important because you want to capture things that are important in your own mind. But Otter AI does a great job. ChatGPT was the platform we use for the AI storytelling piece of it. Canva, using Canva here for this presentation, but Canva also gives us a lot of opportunities to create some graphics and things like that that we could use for the book cover. It also helps us to kind of get ideas on imagery that might be good for some of the stories, etc. Microsoft Word is what we use for putting the stories into. And then the publishing company that we use was On Press Book Publishing. There's a few of them out there, but they had a lot of resources. The price point was good. And it was ultimately really helpful for me because I've never done it before. I've never formatted a book before. It really walks you through that whole process. Their instructions were great. Moving forward. All right. So where and who could you do this with? Honestly, it could be done with anybody. You could do it at the individual level. I could write my own story now. Like this is a much easier, less daunting type of thing for me. But I see this being really valuable at churches. If you want to talk to some of your members and get people to know each other a little bit better or differently, or if you want to highlight some people, you could, doesn't have to be a book either. It could just be like, oh, this month we're gonna talk about Brian's story, and next month we're gonna talk about Lisa's story, and all that kind of stuff. Senior centers, senior living communities. Again, I'm passionate about this because I want to preserve stories, things that make people who they are. And you can go culturally. It's like, why was this group of people called the greatest Americans, right? Like, it's like what drives them, what motivates them, what makes them special in this cultural sense. And I think we'll lose it when they're gone. And there's more and more opportunities for us to preserve it. But there's things about my mom that I really want to know, and there's things about my grandparents that I wish I knew. While they're still here with us, we need to think about this is a great community to go after. Families, even for our own family, like as we want to get to know each other a little bit better, or what people are really passionate about. Like if I can get my 10-year-old to participate in something like this and we create a nice story, it's something we could do as a virtual Christmas card or something like that. Volunteer groups, again, if you're helping different communities out and different people, even at a thing like the YMCA or United Way or something like that, there's an opportunity to help people share their stories, tell us a little bit more about what makes them tick, what was meaningful for them, what they're struggling with, giving a voice to somebody that may otherwise not have had any ability to do something like this. Nonprofits, community organizations, the same kind of thing. It's like anytime we're talking with individuals and we are looking for a low cost, I don't want to say low effort, but it's not the most there's not a lot of effort into this. It took a lot of time and effort to kind of get it all structured, but honestly, once we were doing it, it wasn't that bad. It's a way that you can do something, add value for low cost, low impact in terms of financial, right? So if you're cash strapped or other things, these are things you can do using tools that exist that aren't really that expensive overall. Um, Here's the thing too that I would love to make sure everybody knows. You don't need to be intimidated. It's a lot easier than you think it will be. Yes, I learned a lot. Some of the things that were difficult, it was trying to get everybody scheduled. We did work with individuals at Masonic Care, but there was a change of the individual who we were working for. She ended up not working with them anymore. And so that really we had everybody lined up and then all of a sudden everything stopped, right? And then it took a while before we had someone else that we could really work with to coordinate and get things moving again. And once we did, we had a whole new list of people that we were talking to. We lost most of the originals, and we only had a couple of the originals stay in with the final one. But in the end, it ended up being extremely rewarding. And so it just goes back to that piece of make sure you have the ability to contact people directly, because if that was the case, then I would have been able to be talking with those individuals, um, even when there was a change in staffing. You don't need a book, you don't need AI expertise, you don't need publishing knowledge, and you don't need a partner organization. You can do this anytime. You can do it on your own. It's not a big deal. What you need someone who's willing to tell you the story. You need someone who's willing to listen. You need a recording device like your phone. The phone works great with Otter. But even if you can't do that, you can just still record somebody's interview and then run it through Otter, and it will transcribe it, right? And then you need some time and some intention. Yeah, it will take some time. It will take some effort. It's not going to be crazy, but it will take some effort. So you need to allocate the time that you're going to need to do it. And you need to be sure about why you're doing it so that you keep seeing it through to the end. Um, so don't overthink it. Again, you can start today with one person and you just have to ask their permission to listen and record. Schedule 60 or 90 minutes. You're well served to put up 3 to 5 open-ended prompts, right? And what I mean by that is like, so just have some things in mind to kind of keep that conversation going. So, like, oh, it's great that that happened during this. What else was going on in your neighborhood at that time, or in your world at that time, or in Bridgeport at that time? Oh, that's great. So it helps to give you some of that context, and then that can be used as sort of helping to describe the story and put the scene around the story a little bit better. Some of the other things too is like, oh, well, why was that so impactful for you? And tell me a little bit more about what it led to later on in your life, the decisions that you made later on, how you raised your kids, or something like that, right? Those types of things. Just having some of those ready to go in your head helps that interview to keep going if it starts to stall or go into the wrong direction. Record it, transcribe it, choose an AI platform, and then review the story with that person. I think that's probably the most important thing out of this is make sure that the person who's telling you their story, that they approve that what the final story is, because ultimately it's representing them. So just make sure that you get their permission and their final sort of sign off on it, and you'll be in good shape. So with that, I open it up to you guys. Anybody that saw this and stuck it through like this, I know it's not the most entertaining thing in the world, but as I said, it's a moral responsibility for me to share something that I've learned in this sense. And I want to make sure that this is available to as many people that can do it. So I want to thank you. If you have any questions, my information is there. My phone number's there. You can reach out to info@generation-bridge.com. I'm happy to sit down and talk with you. If you want questions on how to do this, by all means. This, like I said, Generation Bridge is not a business for me. It's a faith platform. And Yeah, I'm here to serve when it comes to this. I really truly believe that if I can take the gifts that God has given me, the mind that He's given me, and to help people out in this world, then I want to try to do that. So, by all means, reach out, and I hope to hear from you. And if not, I hope if you do something like this, that you share your story sometime because I'd love to hear how you did it and anything that you might have learned as well. Thanks a lot, and have a blessed day.